Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Computer Scientist. Tonight we're going to explore something that lives in the shadows of our connected world, something that exists in the invisible spaces between our devices and the cloud, something that most of us prefer not to think about as we drift off to sleep each night, surrounded by the gentle glow of charging phones, the quiet hum of smart speakers, and the ever-watchful eyes of security cameras. We trust our devices. We trust them with our morning routines, our private conversations, our intimate moments. We trust them to forget what we ask them to forget. We trust them to remember only what we want them to remember. But what happens when that trust is broken? What happens when our devices remember too much? What happens when the digital memories we thought we'd erased come back to haunt us? Tonight, I'm going to share 5 true stories. 5 instances where smart devices revealed just how much they truly remember. These aren't urban legends or conspiracy theories. These are documented cases, verified incidents, real people whose lives were fundamentally changed by the fact that their devices kept secrets they never knew were being stored. Some of these stories led to justice, others led to heartbreak. All of them reveal an uncomfortable truth about the world we've built around ourselves. Before we begin, I invite you to settle in. Let your breathing slow. Let the tensions of the day begin to fade. If you enjoy these explorations into the quieter, stranger corners of technology, I invite you to like and subscribe to the Sleepy Computer Scientist, or share a thought down in the comments. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is rest. Let your mind wander through these stories with me. Let them wash over you like a gentle wave, and remember, as unsettling as some of these tales may be, you are safe here. You are simply learning, simply understanding, simply drifting through the landscape of our digital age. Let's begin. Story 1. The Fitbit that remembered everything. It was a cold December morning in 2015, just 2 days before Christmas, when Richard Debate made an emergency call that would eventually unravel his carefully constructed lie. He told police that an intruder had broken into his Connecticut home, shot his wife Connie and tied him to a chair. It was a story that, on the surface, seemed plausible. Home invasions happen. Tragedy strikes without warning. But this story had a problem. A small, silent witness was there the entire time, and it remembered everything. That witness was a Fitbit, a simple fitness tracker that Connie Debate wore clipped to her waistband, designed to count her steps, monitor her heart rate, and track her daily activity. It was the kind of device millions of people wear without thinking twice about what it's really recording, what it's really storing, what story it might tell if anyone ever thought to ask. According to Richard's account, Connie arrived home from her morning workout at the YMCA around 9 in the morning. He claimed that shortly after she entered through the garage, an intruder shot her in the basement. The timeline seemed straightforward. The tragedy seemed real. But when investigators obtained a warrant to access Connie's Fitbit data, they discovered something that contradicted Richard's story in a fundamental way. The Fitbit showed a movement, sustained, continuous movement. The device registered Connie walking a total distance of 1,217 feet between 9:23 in the morning, when the garage door opened and she entered the house, and 10:05 in the morning, when all movement suddenly, permanently stopped. If Richard's story were true, if she'd been shot shortly after entering the house, she would have walked no more than 125 feet from her car to the basement. But the Fitbit told a different story, a story of someone moving through their home for nearly an hour, a story of someone who was very much alive during a time when her husband claimed she was already dead. But the Fitbit wasn't the only digital witness in the debate home. Investigators also examined the house alarm system, both of the couple's cell phones and the home's internet router. Each device added another layer to the timeline, another piece of the puzzle that Richard's story couldn't explain. Connie's phone showed she'd posted videos to Facebook at 9:46 in the morning, using their home IP address. She was online, active, engaged with social media at a time when Richard claimed she was lying dead in the basement. Richard had sent an email to his supervisor at 9:04 that morning, claiming there was an alarm at his house and he needed to go check on it. The email showed it was sent from his home IP address, not from his car as he claimed. The typical reach of a home internet router is only about 300 feet outdoors with no obstructions. Richard couldn't have sent that email from his car nearly 2 miles away, as he had told police. Every digital device in that house was keeping track. Every device was creating a record. Every device was building a timeline that existed independently of human memory, human emotion, human deception. The fitness tracker on Connie's waist, the alarm system monitoring doors and windows, the router logging every connection, the phones tracking every tap and swipe. Together they painted a picture that was impossible to ignore and equally impossible for Richard to explain away. When police dug deeper into Richard's life, they discovered he was having an affair with another woman who was pregnant with his child. They found he'd been researching how to claim life insurance policies. They uncovered a marriage in crisis, documented in notes Connie had written on her iPhone titled "Why I Want a Divorce." She had written about his irresponsible handling of money, his uncaring attitude, his constant absences. She had created a detailed list of grievances, never knowing that list would one day become evidence. The case went to trial in April 2022, after delays caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and the death of Richard's original attorney. The trial lasted 22 days and included 600 exhibits and 130 witnesses. But perhaps the most powerful witness never took the stand. It was the small fitness device that had simply done what it was designed to do: track movement, record activity, store data. The Fitbit had no agenda. It had no bias. It simply remembered. On May 10th, 2022, Richard DeBate was found guilty of murder, tampering with evidence and making false statements to police. The jury believed what the digital devices had recorded over what a human had claimed. In the end, the Fitbit that Connie wore to track her daily steps became the voice she no longer had, telling a story of the final hour of her life with mechanical precision. This case became known as the Fitbit murder, but it opened a door to a much larger conversation. What else do these devices know? What else are they recording? A Fitbit doesn't just count steps. Modern fitness trackers measure heart rate variability, sleep patterns, floors climbed, calories burned, distance traveled, and active minutes throughout the day. They know when you're moving and when you're still. They know when your heart is racing and when it's at rest. They can infer stress levels, exercise intensity, and sleep quality. They create a continuous biometric diary of your existence. The Fitbit in Connie's case was a Fitbit One, which clips to clothing and tracks metrics like steps taken, floors climbed, recent activity levels, distance traveled, and calories burned. It doesn't measure heart rate continuously like wristband models do, but it creates a remarkably detailed picture of physical activity throughout the day. Every step is logged, every movement is recorded, and all of that data is sent to cloud servers where it can be stored, analyzed, and if necessary, subpoenaed. The case wasn't unique in using fitness tracker data as evidence. In Pennsylvania in 2015, a woman claimed she'd been sexually assaulted by an unknown intruder in a home she was visiting. She told police she'd been sleeping when the attack occurred, but her Fitbit told a different story. It showed her walking around all night, never sleeping, contradicting her statement, and ultimately leading to charges of filing a false report. The device that was supposed to help her track her fitness goals instead revealed that her story was fabricated. In another case, a woman in Wisconsin was murdered, and her boyfriend initially fell under suspicion. But his Fitbit provided an alibi that prosecutors couldn't dispute. The device showed he was asleep during the time of the murder, not killing his girlfriend as some had suspected. The same technology that helped convict Richard DeBate helped exonerate Douglas Dietrich. The devices don't take sides, they simply report what they observed. In San Jose, California, a woman named Karen Navarra was murdered in her home. Her Fitbit recorded something even more chilling than movement or lack thereof. It recorded the exact moment her heart rate spiked as she fought for her life, and then the precise moment it fell to zero. The device measured her final heartbeats, creating a timestamp of death that was more accurate than a coroner's estimate. Home surveillance cameras from neighbours showed her stepfather's car in her driveway shortly before the Fitbit recorded her heart. In Australia, Apple Watch data was used to arrest a murder suspect. The victim's health tracking showed strenuous activity at specific times, which investigators linked to the suspect dragging a body and climbing stairs. In Germany, iPhone health app data showed similar patterns of exertion that helped solve a murder case. In each instance, the devices people wore to improve their health became witnesses to their final moments. Think about what your fitness tracker knows about you right now. It knows your resting heart rate. It knows how well you slept last night, or if you slept at all. It knows if you've been more sedentary than usual this week. It knows if you took a walk at 3 in the morning, or if you were climbing stairs rapidly when you're normally asleep. It knows the subtle patterns of your daily existence in ways that even people who live with you might not notice. And all of that data lives somewhere beyond your wrist. Based on what we know from manufacturer policies and legal cases, fitness tracking companies typically store your data on their servers for as long as your account exists. Some companies allow you to manually delete specific activities or workouts, but the deletion process varies, and there's often no guarantee that the data is immediately and permanently erased from all backup systems. Even if you delete the app from your phone, your data may still exist on company servers unless you specifically request account deletion and data erasure. Court cases have shown that law enforcement can obtain this data through warrants, but the process isn't always straightforward. Some companies have resisted, citing privacy concerns and the need to protect user data. Amazon initially refused to turn over echo recordings in a murder case, though they later complied when the defendant gave permission. Fitbit and other manufacturers have taken similar stances, requiring legal documentation before releasing user data. But the key word there is before, not never. The data exists. The data can be accessed. The question is only who has the authority to request it, and under what circumstances. There's another layer to consider. Fitness tracking data isn't always accurate. Studies have shown that devices like Fitbit can be off by as much as 10% when counting steps, and the inaccuracy increases in certain situations, like when someone is resting their wrist on a walker or stroller. Sleep tracking, which some models claim to provide, has been challenged in class action lawsuits claiming the measurements can be off by as much as 45 minutes. The devices aren't perfect. They're interpreting motion and biological signals, not directly observing behavior. This raises uncomfortable questions when this imperfect data is used in court. Defense attorneys have argued that fitness tracker evidence should be inadmissible due to reliability concerns. Judges have ruled differently in different cases. In some trials, expert witnesses are brought in to authenticate the data and explain its limitations. In others, the data is admitted with the understanding that it's not infallible, but it's still valuable evidence when combined with other information. The Connie debate case demonstrated that fitness trackers can provide what one district attorney called an electronic footprint. They create a trail of data that can be retrieved much faster than traditional evidence like DNA tests. Within a day of obtaining Connie's Fitbit, investigators had a timeline that contradicted Richard's story. That speed can be powerful in an investigation. It can also be frightening when you consider how much your own devices might reveal about you, if someone ever thought to look. The uncomfortable truth is this: we wear these devices to improve ourselves, to track our progress, to reach our fitness goals, to understand our bodies better. We think of them as tools we control, but they're also recording devices that create a permanent record of our physical existence. Moment by moment, day by day. They know when we're active and when we're sedentary. They know when our heart races with fear or excitement or exertion. They know when we climb stairs in the middle of the night. They know when we take an unusual walk. They know when our heart stops beating. And they remember, even when we might prefer that they forget. In the debate case, that memory brought justice. It gave Connie a voice when she no longer had one. It exposed a deception that might otherwise have gone undetected. But it also revealed how transparent we've become to the devices we carry. How little privacy remains when every step is measured, every heartbeat is monitored, every movement is logged and uploaded to a server somewhere far away. Richard Debate posted a $1 million bond and was released while awaiting trial. He maintained his innocence throughout the legal proceedings, but on May 10, 2022, after 22 days of trial and deliberation, the jury sided with the Fitbit. They believed the devices over the man. They believed the electronic footprint over the human story. And Richard Debate was convicted of murdering his wife, based in significant part on data from a device that weighed less than an ounce and was designed to do nothing more than count steps. The case set a precedent. It showed that fitness trackers and other wearable devices are no longer just personal health tools. They're potential evidence. They're witnesses that never sleep, never forget, and never lie. They simply record what they observe and store it faithfully in the cloud, waiting for someone to ask what they know. So as you lie here tonight, perhaps you're wearing a fitness tracker right now. Perhaps it's measuring your resting heart rate as you relax. Perhaps it's noting that you've been still for an extended period, categorizing this time as rest or sleep. Perhaps it's recording this very moment, adding it to the continuous diary it keeps of your existence. And somewhere, on servers you'll never see, in data centers you'll never visit, that information is being stored, backed up, preserved, remembered. Just in case someone someday needs to know where you were, what you were doing, and whether your story matches what your devices observed. Sleep well, knowing that your Fitbit is still watching, still counting, still remembering. Story 2, the photos that wouldn't die. Imagine this. You delete a photo from your phone, a photo you never wanted to exist in the first place. Maybe it's embarrassing, maybe it's private, maybe it's from a relationship that ended badly, a time in your life you'd prefer to forget. You delete it from your photo library. You go to the recently deleted folder and delete it again, permanently this time. You watch it disappear. You breathe a sigh of relief. It's gone. Finally, completely, permanently gone. Except it's not. In May 2024, iPhone and iPad users began reporting something that sounds like it came from a digital horror story. Photos they had deleted years ago, sometimes more than a decade ago, were suddenly reappearing in their photo libraries. Not in the recently deleted folder, where deleted photos normally sit for 30 days before being permanently erased. These photos were back in the main library, mixed in with current photos, as if they had never been deleted at all. As if deletion had been nothing more than a temporary suggestion that the devices had politely ignored. The reports started appearing on Reddit and other social media platforms shortly after Apple released iOS 17.5. Users described the experience with a mixture of confusion and horror. One person wrote that photos from 2010 had reappeared, photos they had deleted repeatedly over the years. Another user reported that intimate photos from a past relationship had suddenly returned, causing significant distress. Some users reported seeing deleted photos on devices they had factory reset and sold, though Apple later said this particular claim was false. The scope of the problem seemed limited at first. A handful of users here, a few complaints there. But as more people updated to iOS 17.5 and began scrolling through their photo libraries, more reports surfaced. The pattern became clear. The update was somehow resurrecting photos that users believed had been permanently deleted. Photos that should have been gone, erased, forgotten. Photos that had no business existing anymore. Apple responded to the growing concern with a software update, iOS 17.5.1, released just a few days later. The patch notes were brief and clinical. Provides important bug fixes and addresses a rare issue where photos that experienced database corruption could reappear in the Photos library even if they were deleted. Database corruption. A technical term that sounds benign, almost accidental. But what does it really mean? In a statement to tech media outlets, Apple explained that the bug was caused by corrupted database entries that prevented some photos from being fully deleted from devices. The photos were never fully erased from the file system, the company said. Instead, they remained as ghost files, invisible to the user but still present in the device's storage. When the iOS 17.5 update ran its processes, it encountered these orphaned files and, seeing no deletion marker, helpfully restored them to the photo library. Apple emphasized several points. First, the issue affected only a small number of users and a small number of photos. Second, the corrupted photos were stored locally on the device, not in iCloud Photos. Third, when users transferred data from an old iPhone to a new one, either through local backup device-to-device transfer or iCloud backup without iCloud Photos enabled, these ghost files could hitchhike along to the new device. Fourth, and perhaps most importantly, Apple insisted that when a user properly erases an iPhone using the Erase All Content and Settings function, all files are permanently deleted. The viral claim about deleted photos appearing on a sold device was, according to Apple, patently false and had been deleted by the user who originally posted it. But even with these clarifications, questions remained. How many photos were affected? How long had these ghost files been lurking in device storage? If this was a rare issue affecting only a small number of users, why did so many people report experiencing it after the update? And more fundamentally, if we delete something, shouldn't it be deleted? The truth, as computer scientists know, is that deletion on modern devices is rarely as simple as it sounds. When you delete a file, most operating systems don't immediately overwrite that data. Instead, they mark the space that file occupies as available for new data. The file itself remains intact until something else needs that space and writes over it. This is true for Windows, Linux, Android, iOS, and essentially every modern encrypted file system. It's not a conspiracy. It's how storage management works for performance reasons. Immediately overwriting every deleted file would be slow and would unnecessarily wear out flash storage. This means that deleted files often exist in a kind of limbo. They're not visible to the user. They're not accessible through normal means, but they're still physically present on the storage medium waiting to be overwritten. In most cases, this works fine. The operating system keeps track of which spaces are marked for deletion, and it eventually reuses that space for new data. The user never knows the ghost files exist because they're never resurface. But what happened with iOS 17.5 suggests that Apple's photo database became desynchronized with the actual files on the device. The database thought the photos were deleted and removed them from view, but the files themselves were never properly marked for permanent deletion in the file system. When the update ran, it performed some kind of database repair or consistency check, found these orphaned photo files, and assumed they had been accidentally removed from the library, so it helpfully added them back. From a technical perspective, this is understandable. Database corruption happens. Software has bugs. The interaction between multiple complex systems, the photo library, the file system, the backup system, the sync mechanisms, can create edge cases that developers don't anticipate. What makes this particular bug so disturbing isn't the technical explanation. It's what it reveals about the assumptions we make about deletion. When we delete a photo, we believe we're removing it from existence. We believe we're exercising control over our own data. We believe that when we explicitly, deliberately, sometimes even desperately delete something, that deletion will be honoured. The revelation that deleted photos can persist for years, travelling from device to device, hidden but not gone, undermines that belief. It suggests that our control over our digital lives is more illusory than we thought. Consider what this means for the photos in your own library. How many of them have you deleted over the years? How many embarrassing selfies, unflattering photos, private moments, sensitive documents, screenshots of conversations you shouldn't have had? How many times have you thought, I need to delete that before anyone sees it, and then felt relief after tapping the delete button? Now consider that some of those deletions might not have worked as completely as you thought. That somewhere in the file system of your iPhone, invisible but present, some of those files might still exist, not accessible to you, not visible in any normal view, but present, persistent, waiting for a software bug, a database corruption, an unexpected update to bring them back to the surface. The iOS 17.5 incident wasn't the first time deleted data has come back to haunt users. Similar issues have been reported with various cloud services over the years. Google Photos has occasionally resurrected deleted images when sync settings conflict. Microsoft OneDrive has shown files users thought were deleted. Android devices have displayed deleted photos after system updates. Each incident has its own technical explanation, usually involving sync conflicts, database errors, or backup restoration issues. But the pattern is the same. What we think is deleted sometimes isn't. Cloud storage adds another layer of complexity. When you enable iCloud Photos or Google Photos backup, your photos aren't just stored on your device. They're uploaded to servers, where they're subject to the retention policies and technical architectures of massive corporations. Apple says that photos deleted from iCloud Photos are kept in the recently deleted folder for 30 days, then permanently removed. But permanently removed is a complicated concept in cloud infrastructure. In cloud storage systems, data is typically replicated across multiple servers and data centers for redundancy. When you delete something, all of those copies need to be marked for deletion. But immediate deletion from all systems isn't always practical or even desirable from a system stability perspective. Instead, these copies might be marked as deleted in the main database while the actual data remains in backup systems for some period of time. Eventually, usually within days or weeks, backup systems are cycled and the old data is overwritten. But during that window, the data technically still exists somewhere. This is standard practice across the tech industry. Amazon keeps deleted items in a soft delete state for a period of time. Microsoft retains deleted data for recovery purposes. Google maintains backup systems that might temporarily hold deleted information. It's not malicious. It's designed to protect users from accidental deletion and to ensure data integrity. But it means that deleted often really means marked for future deletion, rather than immediately and irrevocably erased. For most users, this doesn't matter. The technical details of how deletion works behind the scenes are irrelevant as long as deleted items don't reappear. But the iOS 17.5 bug broke that trust. It made visible what is usually invisible, the complex, imperfect process of digital deletion. Some users reported that the resurrected photos included images they had specifically, intentionally deleted because they were private or inappropriate. One Reddit user described deleted intimate photos reappearing. Another mentioned photos from an ex-partner that had been deleted immediately after a breakup. These weren't photos that users had forgotten about and wouldn't mind seeing again. These were photos they actively wanted gone, deleted with purpose and relief. The emotional impact of seeing these photos return can't be understated. For someone who has carefully curated their digital life, removing traces of painful memories or private moments, having those memories suddenly reappear feels like a violation. It feels like the device has betrayed them, revealing secrets they thought were safely buried. Apple's insistence that this was a rare bug affecting a small number of users may be technically accurate, but even if only a few thousand people experienced it, that's still thousands of people who had their trust in digital deletion shaken. And the bug raises a larger question. If this happened once, could it happen again? If a software update can resurrect photos from years ago, what other ghost data might be lurking in our devices, waiting for the right trigger to emerge? Think about the other data on your phone, text messages you deleted, voice memos you recorded and then erased, notes you wrote and then thought better of, app data that was supposed to be cleared when you uninstalled the app, browsing history you cleared from Safari. Every piece of information you've ever created or received on your phone creates some record in the file system, even if that record is invisible to you. When you delete this data, you trust that it's gone. You trust that the operating system is properly managing deletion, properly overwriting old data, properly maintaining the boundary between visible and deleted. The iOS 17.5 bug showed that this trust isn't always warranted. The systems are complex, the interactions between components are intricate. Bugs happen, and when they do, your deleted past can return. Some users took extreme measures in response to the bug. They manually went through their entire photo libraries, deleting photos again and again to make sure they stayed deleted. Others disabled iCloud Photos entirely, choosing to store images only locally. Some switched to manual photo management, using apps that promise more control over deletion. A few even considered switching platforms entirely, questioning whether iOS could be trusted with their private data. Privacy advocates pointed out that this incident highlights a fundamental problem with how we think about data ownership. When you take a photo with your iPhone, who owns that photo? You might think the answer is simple. You do. You took it. It's your image. but the reality is more complicated. The photo exists as data on Apple's hardware, managed by Apple's software, potentially backed up to Apple's iCloud servers. While you have legal ownership of the content, Apple controls the systems that store and manage that content. And as the iOS 17.5 bug showed, sometimes those systems don't behave the way you expect. The incident also raised questions about disclosure. When should companies tell users about potential data retention issues? Apple didn't proactively warn users that deleted photos might not be fully deleted if database corruption occurred. They only explained the issue after users discovered it and raised alarms. This pattern is common in tech. Companies address privacy issues reactively, after problems surface, rather than proactively warning users about potential vulnerabilities. Some cybersecurity experts suggested that the bug might indicate deeper issues with Apple's photo management system. If database corruption can prevent proper deletion, what other edge cases might exist? Could malware exploit similar vulnerabilities? Could a sophisticated attacker find ways to access these ghost files? Apple has always positioned itself as a privacy-focused company, with marketing campaigns emphasizing that what happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone. But bugs like this reveal that even the most privacy-conscious companies struggle with the complexity of modern data management. The fix in iOS 17.5.1 was supposed to resolve the issue by properly cleaning up corrupted database entries and ensuring that deleted photos stay deleted. Apple recommended that users install the update immediately and, if they were concerned, manually delete any unwanted photos that reappeared. But for some users, the damage was already done. The photos they never wanted to see again had already reappeared. The painful memory had already been stirred up. The trust had already been broken. This is the thing about digital memories. They're supposed to be perfect. When we photograph a moment, the image is captured exactly as it was, preserving detail that human memory would blur or forget. But that perfection comes with a cost. Digital memories don't fade gracefully the way organic memories do. They don't soften with time. They don't blur into impressions. They remain sharp and specific and sometimes painful. And when we try to let go of them, when we try to move forward by deleting the evidence of moments we'd rather forget, we trust that deletion will work. We trust that the devices will respect our desire to forget. The iOS 17.5 bug violated that trust. It showed that deletion is not as permanent as we believe, that our devices keep secrets from us, storing data we can't see in places we can't access, that even when we explicitly, repeatedly, desperately try to erase something, it might persist, waiting, hidden, ready to return at the most unexpected moment. As you rest here tonight, your phone is probably nearby, charging, quietly backing up to the cloud, syncing photos and data, and somewhere in its file system there might be ghost files, deleted photos that aren't quite deleted, erased data that isn't quite erased, information you thought you controlled, lingering in digital limbo. You probably won't ever see these ghost files. The iOS 17.5 bug was rare, affecting a small percentage of users. The systems usually work as intended. The deleted stays deleted, the erased stays erased, usually. But now you know that sometimes, just sometimes, the past doesn't stay buried. Sometimes the photos return. Sometimes the devices remember what we tried to forget. Sometimes deletion is just a polite fiction we tell ourselves, while data persists in places we can't see, waiting for a bug, a glitch, a database corruption to bring it back to light. And that knowledge changes how we think about deletion. It makes us wonder, what else is still there, invisible, but present, in the devices we trust with our most private moments? What other ghosts are waiting in the file system, ready to be resurrected by the next unexpected update? The answer, if we're honest, is that we don't really know. We trust that companies like Apple, Google, Samsung and Microsoft have properly implemented deletion. We trust that when we remove something, it's truly removed. We trust that the systems work as designed. But trust, as the iOS 17.5 bug showed, is not the same as certainty. So sleep peacefully tonight, knowing that your deleted photos are probably gone, probably properly erased, probably never coming back, probably. But maybe, just maybe, check your photo library one more time in the morning, just to be sure. Story 3. When your home is always listening. There's a woman in Portland, Oregon, who will never forget May 2018. She was having a private conversation with her husband in their home, discussing something mundane, personal, nothing remarkable. They were surrounded by their smart home devices, including Amazon Echo speakers in several rooms, devices they'd purchased for convenience, devices they trusted to respond only when spoken to, only when activated by the wake word Alexa. But on this particular day, something went terribly wrong. The Echo in their home woke up without being called. It heard something in their conversation that sounded enough like Alexa to activate. Then it heard something that sounded like send message, so it asked aloud, "To whom?" The couple didn't notice. They continued their conversation, and the Echo, ever helpful, hearing what sounded like a name in their ongoing discussion, sent a recording of their private conversation to one of the husband's contacts in Seattle. A few hours later, the woman received a panicked phone call from that contact. "Unplug your Alexa devices right now," the contact urged. "You're being hacked." But they weren't being hacked. The system had worked exactly as it was programmed to work. It had heard wake words that weren't spoken. It had interpreted normal conversation as commands, and it had faithfully executed those phantom commands, recording private moments and sharing them with someone the couple had never intended to include in their conversation. When the story broke, Amazon released a statement acknowledging the incident and explaining the chain of events. An Amazon spokesperson told Tech Media that Echo woke up due to a word in background conversation sounding like Alexa. Then, the subsequent conversation was heard as a send message request. At which point Alexa said out loud, "To whom?" At which point, the background conversation was interpreted as a name in the customer's contact list. The explanation was technically accurate, but it did little to comfort the couple or the millions of other people who suddenly realized that their smart speakers could make catastrophic mistakes. This wasn't a malicious hack. It wasn't a targeted attack. It was simply a cascade of false positives, each one building on the last, until a private conversation became evidence of how imperfect these systems truly are. The Portland incident became one of the most famous examples of smart speaker failures, but it was far from the only one. As these devices proliferated in homes around the world, more and more people began sharing stories of unexpected activations, unintended recordings, and unsettling moments when their devices seemed to be paying more attention than they should. In 2020, researchers from Northeastern University and Imperial College London conducted a comprehensive study of smart speakers to answer a question that many users had been asking. How often do these devices activate without permission? The researchers set up devices from Amazon, Google, Apple, and Microsoft in controlled environments and exposed them to various audio sources, from television shows to normal household conversations. The results were eye-opening. Based on the findings, smart speakers activated without their wake words being spoken between 1.5 and 19 times per day on average, depending on how much dialogue was happening around them. During these unintended activations, more than half of the devices recorded audio for 6 seconds or more. The longest accidental recording lasted 43 seconds. Think about what can be said in 43 seconds. An entire conversation, a private moment, sensitive information about health, finances, relationships. The study found that certain phrases triggered these false activations more than others. Words that sounded similar to wake words, obviously, but also certain common phrases in television, shows and movies. When the researchers played episodes of The West Wing, Google Home Mini devices activated an average of 0.95 times per hour. That's nearly once every hour just from television dialogue. When exposed to other popular shows, similar patterns emerged across all the smart speaker brands tested. What makes this particularly concerning is that users typically don't notice these activations. The devices might light up briefly, but if you're focused on a conversation or watching television, you might not see it. And even if you do notice, by the time you react, the recording might already be complete and uploaded to the cloud. The speakers are designed to respond quickly, which means they capture and transmit audio almost instantly upon activation. But it gets more unsettling. In 2019, multiple investigations revealed that Amazon, Google, Apple, and other smart speaker manufacturers had been using human contractors to review recordings from users' devices. These contractors, often working from home or in call centers around the world, would listen to recordings to help improve the voice recognition systems. They were supposed to be listening to verify commands and improve accuracy. But they ended up hearing much more than commands. According to reports from Bloomberg and other outlets, Amazon employees listened to thousands of recordings captured by Alexa, including conversations that weren't triggered by wake words. Some of these recordings contained highly personal information, conversations between users and their doctors, arguments between couples, private discussions about health problems, financial information, intimate moments. The contractors heard it all. In one case reported by Bloomberg, Amazon contractors heard what they believed might be a sexual assault. They had no protocol for reporting such incidents. They discussed it among themselves, but the company had no system in place for handling potential crimes captured by Alexa. The contractor who heard the recording was troubled but didn't know what to do. The recording existed in Amazon's systems, along with millions of others, reviewed by low-paid contractors in various countries who signed non-disclosure agreements but had access to remarkably intimate moments from strangers' lives. Google faced similar revelations. In 2019, a whistleblower revealed that Google contractors were listening to recordings from Google Assistant devices, including recordings that were made when users hadn't said the wake words. Some recordings included identifiable information like addresses, medical information, and details about users' locations and daily routines. The recordings were supposed to be anonymized, but the whistleblower noted that they often contained enough information to identify the user, especially when combined with other available data. Germany's Data Protection Authority ordered Google to temporarily stop this practice, citing potential violations of the EU's General Data Protection Regulation. Google defended the practice, explaining that they listened to only a small subset of recordings, about 0.2%, to improve their speech recognition technology and help the system better understand different accents and dialects. That might sound like a small percentage until you do the math. If Google Assistant processes hundreds of millions of requests per day, and 0.2% of those are reviewed by human contractors, that's potentially hundreds of thousands of recordings being listened to by humans every single day. Across all smart speaker manufacturers, the number of recordings reviewed by human listeners likely reaches into the millions annually, if not monthly. The companies argued that this human review was necessary for improving the technology. Machine learning systems need training data, and having humans verify that the system correctly understood commands helps refine the algorithms. But users weren't clearly informed about this practice. The information was often buried in privacy policies that few people read. The consent was implied rather than explicit, and many users who bought smart speakers for convenience had no idea that strangers might be listening to recordings from their homes. Apple faced criticism after a Guardian report revealed that Siri regularly captured private medical information, drug deals, and intimate moments, all sent to contractors for quality control. Apple initially defended the practice, but later changed its policy to make the program opt-in rather than opt-out. Users would have to explicitly consent to having their recordings reviewed by Apple contractors. Amazon and Google eventually made similar changes, allowing users to opt out of human review in their privacy settings. But the default settings had allowed human review, which means millions of devices were set up with human listeners enabled, unless users specifically found and changed that setting. And even for users who did opt out, questions remained about what happened to recordings that had already been collected. The revelation about human reviewers shattered another assumption many users had about smart speakers. The assumption that their interactions with these devices were private, processed entirely by machines, never heard by human ears. The reality was messier. Yes, most processing was automated. But a non-trivial portion of recordings were selected for human review, reviewed by contractors who might be anywhere in the world, working for companies that might not have strong privacy protocols, listening to moments that users never intended to share with anyone. Think about what your smart speaker has heard. If you have an Alexa, a Google Home, a Siri-enabled device, or any other voice assistant, it has been listening continuously for its wake word. That means it's processing, at some level, every sound in its vicinity. Most of that processing happens locally and is immediately discarded. But when the device thinks it hears a wake word, it wakes up, it starts recording. And what happens to those recordings? According to Amazon's policies, Alexa recordings are stored in the cloud until you manually delete them. You can go into the Alexa app, view your voice history, and delete recordings individually or in bulk. You can even set recordings to auto-delete after 3 months or 18 months. But by default, they're kept indefinitely, forever. Or at least until Amazon decides to change its data retention policies or shuts down the service. Google offers similar controls. You can view your Google Assistant history, delete recordings, and set auto-deletion periods. But again, the default is to keep recordings indefinitely. Apple claims to do less storing, keeping Siri interactions only for the length of time needed to process them, typically a few months. But these policies can change. What's deleted today might be retained tomorrow if the company updates its terms of service. And even if you delete recordings from the main system, what about backups? What about the copies that were sent to contractors for review? What about data that's been aggregated into training sets for machine learning models? Once a recording has been used to improve a voice recognition algorithm, that information becomes part of the system in a way that can't easily be removed. Your voice, your speech patterns, your way of pronouncing words, all of that becomes woven into the fabric of how the assistant understands language. There's also the question of what happens to these recordings in legal contexts. Multiple cases have shown that law enforcement can subpoena smart speaker data. In an Arkansas murder case, prosecutors sought Alexa recordings from a suspect's Echo device. Amazon initially resisted but eventually provided the data after the suspect consented. The recordings didn't contain evidence of the crime, but they showed what kinds of commands the suspect had given throughout the evening. They painted a picture of normal activity right up until the time of the murder. In other cases, smart speaker data has been used to establish alibis, to contradict stories, to create timelines. The same data that helps solve "Why did Alexa turn on my lights at 3 a.m?" can help solve "Where was this person when a crime occurred?" The devices don't distinguish between helpful convenience and incriminating evidence. They just record what they observe. Some privacy researchers have raised concerns about smart speakers in sensitive locations. Should doctors' offices have Alexa devices? Should therapy sessions happen in rooms with Google Home? Should business meetings include always listening microphones that might send recordings to cloud servers? There are no clear regulations in many jurisdictions. HIPAA in the United States protects health information, but it's not entirely clear how those protections apply to incidental recordings by smart devices in medical settings. One study found that smart speakers could be vulnerable to dolphin attacks, ultrasonic commands that humans can't hear but that devices can detect and respond to. Researchers demonstrated that they could issue commands to smart speakers using frequencies above human hearing range, potentially allowing hidden activation and control. While there haven't been reports of this being exploited in the wild, the vulnerability highlights how these devices exist in a world we can't fully perceive or control. Another concern is the smart home profile that these devices create. Every command you give tells the system something about you. When you ask Alexa to turn off the lights, the system learns when you typically go to bed. When you ask Google to play music, it learns your taste. When you ask about the weather, it learns your routines. When you ask about nearby restaurants, it infers your location and dining preferences. Over time, these individual data points combine into a comprehensive profile of your habits, your schedule, your preferences, your daily life. This profiling can be valuable for customization and convenience. The system learns to anticipate your needs. But it also means that somewhere in corporate databases, there exists a remarkably detailed picture of how you live. And if that data were ever breached, if hackers gained access to smart speaker databases, they wouldn't just get recordings. They'd get behavioral profiles that could be used for sophisticated identity theft, social engineering, or targeted attacks. Despite all these concerns, smart speakers continue to grow in popularity. As of recent estimates, more than half of US households have at least one smart speaker device. People value the convenience, the ability to control lights, music, thermostats, and other devices with voice commands. The hands-free access to information, weather, timers, reminders, the integration with other smart home devices. For many users, the benefits outweigh the privacy concerns. But what if we could have both? What if smart speakers could provide convenience without requiring permanent cloud storage of recordings? Some companies are exploring edge computing solutions, where more processing happens locally on the device rather than in the cloud. Apple has emphasized on-device processing for Siri where possible. Amazon has released some Alexa devices with local processing capabilities. These approaches reduce the amount of data sent to cloud servers and potentially reduce privacy risks. But local processing isn't perfect. It typically offers less sophisticated voice recognition since the local chips can't match the processing power of massive server farms. It may require internet connectivity for complex queries anyway, and it doesn't solve the fundamental problem that these devices need to listen continuously to hear wake words, which means they're always processing sound from your home at some level, Some privacy advocates recommend not using smart speakers at all, or at least not in private spaces like bedrooms or bathrooms. Others suggest muting the microphone when you're having sensitive conversations. Most devices have physical mute buttons that disable the microphone, though you have to remember to unmute it when you want to use the device again. Some people cover the microphones with tape, or only plug in their devices when they want to use them, though this defeats much of the convenience that makes smart speakers appealing. The reality is that smart speakers represent a trade-off. You gain convenience and lose some privacy. You gain hands-free control and lose some sense of solitude in your own home. You gain integration with smart home technology and gain a permanent listener that might mishear, might activate accidentally, might record something you never intended to share. And as the Portland woman learned, even when the system works as designed, it can still betray your trust in catastrophic ways. The Echo that sent her private conversation to a contact wasn't malfunctioning. It was following its programming. It heard what it interpreted as commands and executed them faithfully. The problem wasn't that the system failed. The problem was that the system succeeded at something the users never intended. As you drift towards sleep tonight, you might hear a smart speaker in your home, a gentle chime as it processes a command, the subtle click of its microphone activating, or perhaps you hear nothing, because the device works silently, waiting for its wake word, processing sound constantly, ready to respond in milliseconds. And somewhere, in data centers you'll never visit, your voice recordings might be stored, time-stamped, catalogued, potentially reviewed by contractors you'll never meet, creating a record of your requests, your habits, your daily routines, building a profile of how you live, what you need, when you sleep, what you care about. The device is always listening, not maliciously, not with intent to violate your privacy, just listening as it was designed to do, waiting for its name, processing sound, ready to help, ready to record, ready to remember everything it hears, filing it away in digital archives that might persist long after the device itself is obsolete. Sleep well, knowing that your smart speaker is there, always listening, always ready to help, always storing, always remembering, always watching over your home with invisible, ever-attentive digital ears. Story 4. The digital ghosts we leave behind. It's 3 a.m. Your phone lights up with a notification. Happy birthday to your spouse's name. Say happy birthday on their timeline. But your spouse has been gone for 6 months. The cancer finally claimed them after a long, painful battle. You thought you'd remembered to handle everything. The funeral arrangements, the will, the bank accounts, the utilities. But you forgot about Facebook. You forgot that the algorithm doesn't know about death unless someone tells it. So here you are, wide awake in the dark, holding a phone that's cheerfully reminding you to celebrate a birthday that will never come again. The notification glows in your hands, persistent and oblivious, a digital ghost reaching out from systems that don't understand grief. This is the new reality of loss. When someone dies, they don't just leave behind physical possessions and memories in the minds of those who loved them. They leave behind an entire digital existence. Social media profiles that keep posting memories, email accounts that keep receiving messages, smart home devices that still respond to their voice profiles, calendars that still hold reminders about appointments they'll never attend, subscriptions that keep charging credit cards, Netflix accounts that keep suggesting shows based on viewing habits that have ended. The digital afterlife is messy, complicated, and emotionally devastating in ways we're only beginning to understand. Traditional death rituals evolved over thousands of years to help the living process loss and move forward. But digital death is so new that we're still figuring out how to handle it. And the technology companies that host these digital ghosts often have policies that are confusing, inconsistent, or woefully inadequate for dealing with the complexities of grief. Facebook introduced memorial pages in 2009 after receiving numerous user requests related to tragedies like the 2007 Virginia Tech shooting. The idea was to transform profiles of deceased users into memorial spaces where friends and family could share remembrances. When a profile is memorialized, it gets a remembering badge before the person's name. The profile no longer appears in public searches or friend suggestions. New friend requests aren't sent, and importantly, those devastating birthday notifications stop. But memorializing a profile requires that someone notify Facebook of the death. That means a friend or family member needs to submit a request, provide proof of death like an obituary or death certificate, and navigate Facebook's reporting system while grieving. Many people don't know this needs to be done. Many don't know how to do it. And so profiles persist in an undead state, neither fully active nor properly memorialized, generating notifications that wound the people left behind. Facebook allows users to designate a legacy contact before they die, someone who can manage their memorial page after they're gone. This person can accept friend requests, update the profile picture, and pin tribute posts. But they can't log in as the deceased user. They can't see private messages. They can't delete posts or photos. The control is limited, which is intentional to protect the deceased's privacy, but can be frustrating for family members trying to manage a loved one's digital legacy. Instagram, owned by Facebook, has similar policies. Profiles can be memorialized or deleted, but someone needs to request it and provide documentation. Twitter, now X, will deactivate accounts upon request from authorized parties. Google has an inactive account manager that allows users to specify what happens to their accounts after periods of inactivity. They can choose trusted contacts to receive their data, or they can choose to have everything deleted. But again, this requires planning ahead. It requires thinking about death while you're alive, which many people understandably avoid. And what happens if the deceased didn't plan? What if they didn't designate a legacy contact or set up inactive account management? What if they died suddenly, unexpectedly, leaving their digital life in disarray? Then the responsibility falls on family members and friends to piece together the deceased's online presence and navigate the policies of multiple technology companies, each with its own requirements, each requiring proof of authority, each moving at its own pace. The emotional toll of this digital cleanup is significant. Grieving people report spending dozens of hours trying to close accounts, memorialize profiles, and stop the flow of automated communications from their loved ones' devices and services. Each email that arrives at the deceased's address feels like a fresh wound. Each notification from their Fitbit or Apple Watch. Each calendar reminder about an appointment they'll never make. One widow reported that her deceased husband's Apple Watch kept sending her notifications about his activity goals. The watch didn't know he was dead. It just knew that it wasn't detecting movement or heartbeat, so it kept trying to motivate him. Time to stand. You can close your rings. Don't forget your activity goals. Each notification was a small cruelty, a reminder that the systems designed to help the living don't know how to handle death. Smart home devices present their own complications. If the deceased set up voice profiles for Alexa or Google Assistant, those profiles might still exist, waiting to be triggered. If they had personalized smart home routines, those routines might keep running. lights turning on at times the person used to wake up, coffee makers starting for someone who will never drink the coffee, thermostats adjusting to preferences that no longer matter, and in households where the deceased was the tech-savvy person who set up all the smart home devices, survivors might not know how to access or modify these systems. They might not have the passwords. They might not know which apps control which devices. They might not even know all the devices that exist. So the home continues operating according to routines set by someone who's gone, creating an eerie sense that the person is still there, still controlling things, still present in the automation of daily life. Social media creates a particularly complex form of digital haunting. When someone dies, their posts remain. Their photos stay visible to friends. Their comments persist on other people's content. And perhaps most painfully, Facebook and other platforms occasionally resurface these old posts through "on this day" features or memory prompts. You have memories with deceased person's name from 5 years ago today. These automated memories can be devastating for people who are trying to move forward with their grief. One moment you're scrolling through your feed, and suddenly you're confronted with a photo of someone you've lost, a post they made years ago, a moment captured when they were still alive and well. The algorithms don't understand that these memories might be painful. They don't know that "on this day" might be a day you'd rather not remember. Some people find comfort in these digital remnants. They visit memorial pages to read tributes. They look through old photos. They watch videos the person posted. The digital traces become a way to maintain connection, to remember, to keep the person's memory alive. For these people, the persistence of digital data is a gift, a way to hold on to what's been lost. But others find it unbearable. They delete social media accounts to avoid unexpected confrontations with memories. They change their notification settings to avoid birthday reminders. They log out of shared accounts to stop seeing the deceased's viewing preferences on streaming services. They want to move forward, and the constant digital reminders make that forward movement feel impossible. The legal landscape around digital assets after death is still evolving. Most US states have adopted some version of the Revised Uniform Fiduciary Access to Digital Assets Act, which gives executors and other authorized parties the right to access a deceased person's digital property. But access doesn't always mean full control. Email providers might give access to account information, but not the actual email content, citing privacy concerns. Social media platforms might allow account closure but not content review. And the terminology of digital death is itself revealing. We don't talk about someone's Twitter dying. We talk about deactivating or deleting accounts, as if they were active services rather than repositories of someone's thoughts and expressions. We memorialize Facebook profiles, turning them from living, updating presences into static monuments. We talk about digital legacies and online remains, borrowing the language of physical death to describe something fundamentally different. According to researchers at the Oxford Internet Institute, the number of deceased Facebook users could reach 4.9 billion by the end of this century. By 2100, dead users on the platform would likely outnumber the living ones. Facebook would become, in essence, the world's largest digital cemetery, a place where memories outnumber moments, where the past is more populated than the present. This raises philosophical questions about the nature of memory and identity. When someone dies but their digital presence remains, are they still somehow present? When their post can still be read, their photos still viewed, their words still quoted, have they truly left? Or have we created a new form of immortality? One where digital traces allow us to interact with the dead in ways that previous generations never could. Some cultures might embrace this. Some might find it comforting to have these accessible records of the deceased. But others might find it disturbing, a violation of the natural order where the dead are supposed to fade gracefully into memory rather than persist in algorithmic eternity. There's also the question of consent. When someone creates a social media profile, posts photos, shares thoughts, they're doing so as a living person with agency. After they die, that agency's gone, but the content remains. Do they have a right to have that content deleted? Do they have a right to have it preserved? Most people never specify their wishes for their digital afterlife, leaving survivors to guess or make unilateral decisions. And what about the privacy of the deceased? Email accounts contain private conversations. Text message histories include intimate exchanges. Photo libraries hold images that were never meant to be public. Should family members have access to all of this? Most people wouldn't read a deceased person's paper diary without permission, but digital diaries, email histories, message logs, these are often accessed by family members or executors as part of closing accounts. Some tech companies recognize this tension. Apple's Legacy Contact feature, introduced in recent years, allows users to designate someone who can access their iCloud account after death, but only if the user has specifically generated an access key for them. Without that pre-authorization, Apple maintains that the deceased's privacy should be protected, even from family members. Google offers similar protections, requiring users to explicitly grant access to their inactive account data. But these privacy protections can create painful situations. A parent who has lost a child might desperately want access to photos and messages, seeking any remaining connection to the person they've lost. But without pre-authorization, they might be locked out permanently. The device that was supposed to preserve memories becomes a barrier, protecting privacy that the dead may not have cared about maintaining. There are even stories of deceased people's accounts being hacked or exploited. In 2012, the family of a deceased US soldier was horrified to see his photo being used in ads for dating websites. Someone had stolen his image and was using it to lure people to fraudulent sites. In another case, someone gained access to a deceased person's Facebook account and began sending harassing messages to the person's friends, impersonating them. The friends knew the person was dead, but they also couldn't bear to block the account because it represented their only remaining digital connection to their friend. Identity theft extends beyond death. Scammers target deceased people's identities for credit card fraud, loan applications, and other financial crimes. They know that deceased people aren't monitoring their credit reports or checking their bank statements, and if social media accounts remain active and unmonitored, they can be valuable sources of personal information for these criminals. The emotional weight of managing a loved one's digital afterlife can be compounded by the sheer number of accounts and services to handle. Email accounts with multiple providers, social media on a dozen platforms, cloud storage services, photo sharing services, music streaming services, video streaming services, gaming accounts, banking apps, shopping apps, fitness apps. Every app the person used, every service they subscribed to, every account they created becomes something that survivors need to address. And unlike physical possessions that can be sorted, donated, or disposed of in a relatively short time, digital cleanup can drag on for months or years. Services keep sending emails, subscriptions keep renewing, accounts keep existing in digital limbo. The process of digital death is slow, tedious, and emotionally exhausting. Some companies are starting to recognize these problems and improve their policies. Apple now allows users to add legacy contacts. Google's Inactive Account Manager provides more granular control. Some social media platforms have improved their memorialization processes. But progress is slow, and many people still die without proper digital estate planning, leaving their survivors to navigate confusing policies while grieving. Privacy experts recommend that people create digital estate plans while they're alive. This includes making a list of all accounts and how to access them, designating legacy contacts where services allow it, deciding which accounts should be closed and which should be preserved, and communicating these wishes to family members. But few people actually do this. Death planning is uncomfortable. Digital death planning is even more so because it requires thinking about the detailed mechanics of online life at a time when we'd rather think about anything else. And so people die with their digital lives unresolved. Their accounts persist, their devices continue operating, their data remains scattered across corporate servers, and their loved ones are left to piece together a digital legacy while simultaneously grieving a physical loss. As you rest here tonight, consider your own digital existence. How many accounts do you have? How many devices? How many subscriptions? How many gigabytes of photos, messages, emails, and documents? If you were gone tomorrow, who would know how to access all of this? Who would know what you'd want done with it? Who would understand how to stop the flow of automated notifications and algorithmic memories? The likelihood is that you, like most people, haven't thought about it in detail. You're busy living, not planning for not living. And that's understandable. But it means that your digital ghost will likely persist long after you're gone, generating notifications, sending reminders, appearing in memories, existing in a state of digital undeath until someone, perhaps a grieving family member, slowly, painfully shuts it all down, account by account, service by service, notification by notification. The technology companies that host our digital lives weren't designed with death in mind. They were designed for growth, for engagement, for continuous activity. Death is an edge case, an unexpected error in systems built around the assumption of perpetual life, and so they handle it clumsily, insensitively, with policies that protect corporate interests more than they comfort the grieving. But death, of course, is not an edge case. It's the only certainty. And as more of our lives migrate online, as more of our identities become digital, the question of what happens to that digital existence after death becomes more pressing. We need better tools, better policies, better understanding of how to honour the dead while respecting their privacy, better ways to help the living move forward without being constantly ambushed by algorithmic memories of those they've lost. Until then, phones will keep sending birthday notifications for people who will never have another birthday. Smart watches will keep trying to motivate people who will never move again. Social media will keep generating memories that hurt more than they heal. And the digital ghosts we leave behind will haunt the living, not through malice, but through the persistence of systems that never learned how to let go. Story 5. When your home knows too much about you. Smart homes were supposed to make life easier. Lights that turn on when you enter a room. Thermostats that learn your preferences. Security cameras that let you monitor your property from anywhere. Door locks you can control with your phone. Speakers that play music on command. Refrigerators that tell you when you're low on milk. The promise was convenience, automation, a home that anticipates your needs. But every smart device is also a recording device. Every sensor is a potential witness. And in situations where relationships break down, where trust dissolves, where conflict erupts, that smart home can become a panopticon, a surveillance system that knows far more about your private life than you ever intended to share. Consider what happens during a divorce. Suddenly, the smart home you built together becomes contested territory. Who has access to the security cameras? Who can control the door locks? Who receives notifications when someone enters or leaves? Who can see the history of when lights were turned on or off, suggesting whether someone was home? Every device becomes a potential tool for monitoring, controlling, or gathering evidence against the other person. Family law attorneys have started issuing urgent warnings about digital security during divorce proceedings. The advice sounds like something from a spy thriller. Change all your passwords. Remove your ex-partner's access from all smart home devices. Create new accounts that they don't know about. Review every single sharing setting on every single cloud service. Check for tracking apps on your phone. Change your Wi-Fi password. Reset smart devices to factory settings. Essentially, perform a complete digital lock change on your entire home environment. Because if you don't, your ex-partner might have the ability to monitor when you're home, who visits you, what you're doing, and where you're going. They might be able to see photos you upload to shared cloud storage. They might receive notifications about your calendar appointments. They might be able to access your location history through shared accounts. They might even be able to listen through smart speakers or watch through security cameras if those devices are still linked to their accounts. This isn't theoretical paranoia, it's documented reality. Lawyers report numerous cases where divorcing spouses use smart home technology to harass, monitor, or gather evidence against each other. Thermostats remotely adjusted to uncomfortable temperatures. Lights flashed on and off in the middle of the night. Door locks changed codes without warning. Security cameras used to track the other person's movements. Smart speakers activated remotely to eavesdrop on conversations. One particularly chilling capability involves cloud storage services like iCloud, Google Drive, or Dropbox. If you're sharing an account with someone, or if they still have access to folders you've shared, they can see everything you upload. Photos from your phone that automatically back up to the cloud, documents you save, even location data embedded in photos, revealing where you were when you took them. If you don't revoke access explicitly, your ex can maintain this window into your life indefinitely. Streaming services reveal information too. Netflix, Amazon Prime, Spotify. They all show what you're watching or listening to, which can hint at your emotional state or new interests. More importantly, they often show the location and IP address of recent logins. If you're staying at a new place, perhaps at a friend's house or a new apartment, and you log into a shared streaming account, your ex can potentially see that location and infer where you're staying. Fitness trackers present their own risks. We've already discussed the Fitbit murder case, but in divorce contexts, fitness tracking data can reveal patterns of movement, locations visited, and activity levels that one party might not want to share. The same data that helps track your daily exercise also creates a detailed record of where you go and what you do. Smart home ecosystems like Google Home, Amazon Alexa, or Apple HomeKit often lack robust features for evicting a user from shared access. The systems were designed for cooperation within a household, not for the breakdown of that household. There's usually no simple "remove this person from all devices" button. Instead, you have to go through each device individually, changing settings, revoking permissions, resetting configurations. It's tedious, technically complex, and easy to miss something. And smart home devices can be used as evidence in court. In divorce proceedings, particularly those involving custody disputes or allegations of infidelity, lawyers have subpoenaed data from smart homes to establish timelines, prove or disprove claims, and generally paint pictures of how people were really living. Were you home when you said you were home? Did someone else visit when you claimed to be alone? Did you leave the house at unusual times? Security cameras are particularly valuable as evidence. If you have cameras at your front door, in your driveway, or monitoring other parts of your property, they've been recording who comes and goes. Some systems store this footage locally. Others upload it to cloud services where it might be retained for days, weeks, or even months depending on your subscription plan. That footage can be subpoenaed. It can be used to corroborate or contradict stories. It can reveal patterns of behaviour. But it's not just domestic disputes that make smart homes problematic. Law enforcement has also taken interest in smart home data. We've already mentioned the Arkansas murder case where prosecutors sought Amazon Echo recordings. That case highlighted a tension between privacy rights and criminal investigation. Should companies be required to turn over smart home data when law enforcement requests it? Should there be any data in the first place that could be turned over? In the Arkansas case, the suspect eventually consented to release the Alexa recordings, so the Fourth Amendment question about unreasonable search and seizure never got fully litigated. But the case raised awareness that smart home devices create records that can be accessed by authorities with proper legal process. Your smart lock records when doors open. Your security cameras record who approaches your property. Your smart thermostat knows when you're home. Your smart speaker hears what you say. All of this is potentially discoverable evidence. Some privacy advocates argue that we need stronger legal protections for smart home data. They point out that traditional Fourth Amendment protections assume that information in your home is private and protected unless authorities obtain a warrant. But when that information is stored on corporate servers rather than in your home, the legal protections become murkier. Courts have generally held that data stored with third parties has reduced privacy protections compared to data stored in your home. This means that your conversation with a family member in your living room might be more protected if it's just the two of you talking than if you're talking near an Alexa device that recorded the conversation and uploaded it to Amazon servers. The content is the same, the privacy expectation is the same, but the legal protection is different because of where the data is stored. There's also the risk of security breaches. Smart home devices are computers, and computers can be hacked. Researchers have demonstrated numerous vulnerabilities in popular smart home devices: weak default passwords, unencrypted communications, bugs in software. These create openings for malicious actors. If someone hacks your smart home system, they might be able to access your cameras, unlock your doors, or monitor your activities without your knowledge. Some of the documented security flaws are surprisingly basic. Smart door locks that can be picked with Bluetooth attacks, security cameras with default admin passwords that were never changed, smart thermostats that reveal your Wi-Fi network credentials. Each device is a potential vulnerability, and most consumers don't have the technical expertise to properly secure their smart home networks. Even without hacking, the simple fact that your smart home data exists creates risks. Data breaches at major companies are common, millions of user records stolen, login credentials exposed, personal information leaked. If a smart home device manufacturer suffers a breach, your home automation data, your camera footage, your voice recordings, they all become potentially exposed to whoever obtained the leaked data. And consider the broader implications of living in a home that constantly monitors you. Studies have shown that people behave differently when they know they're being watched. It's called the observer effect, or sometimes the Hawthorne effect. When surveillance is present, whether human or digital, people alter their behavior. They're more self-conscious, more careful, less spontaneous. This suggests that smart homes might subtly change how we live in our own spaces. If you know your security camera is recording, you might be more careful about what you do in its view. If you know your smart speaker might be listening, you might censor what you say or where you say it. If you know your smart devices are creating logs of your activities, you might alter your routines to be more privacy conscious. Your home, traditionally the most private of spaces, becomes a stage where you're constantly aware of the digital audience. Children growing up in smart homes might never know what it's like to have truly private space. Their interactions are potentially monitored by parents through smart devices. Their movements tracked, their voices recorded, their activities logged. Some might argue this is good for child safety. Others worry it creates a generation that never learns what privacy feels like, what it means to have space that's truly your own, unobserved and unmonitored. The line between safety and surveillance is blurry. Parents want to protect their children, so they install monitoring systems. Spouses want security, so they set up cameras and smart locks. These motivations are understandable, but the infrastructure these motivations create can also be used for control, for suspicion, for invasion of privacy when trust breaks down. And smart home data lasts. Unlike a verbal conversation that fades from memory, unlike a moment that lives only in human recollection, smart home data is recorded, time-stamped, stored. It creates permanent records of temporary moments. A camera captured you leaving the house at an unusual time. A smart lock logged when you returned. A thermostat noted you were home when you said you'd be elsewhere. These digital records can contradict human memory, can expose secrets, can reveal patterns you didn't realize you were creating. There's something deeply unsettling about realizing that your home has been keeping a diary of your existence without you fully understanding what was being written. You thought you were just turning on lights with voice commands. You thought you were just checking who was at your door. You thought you were just adjusting your thermostat remotely. But each of these actions created data. Data that was logged. Data that was stored. Data that could potentially be accessed by spouses, attorneys, law enforcement, hackers, or anyone else who gains the right kind of access. The smart home companies themselves have access to stunning amounts of data about how you live. Google knows when you adjust your Nest thermostat. Amazon knows what commands you give to Alexa. Apple knows what scenes you activate with HomeKit. Ring knows who approaches your door. Ecobee knows your temperature preferences. Philips Hue knows when you turn lights on and off. Each company maintains logs of device activity, supposedly for troubleshooting and service improvement. But those logs paint detailed pictures of daily life. Theoretically, this data is anonymized, or at least secured according to each company's privacy policy. But privacy policies can change. Companies can be acquired. Business models can shift. Data that was collected for one purpose can be repurposed for another. And there's always the risk that accumulated data about millions of smart homes could be valuable to advertisers, insurers, law enforcement, or other parties with interest beyond just helping you automate your lights. Consider what home insurance companies might do with smart home data. If they could access when your smart locks are engaged, they might adjust your rates based on how consistently you lock your doors. If they could see your security camera placement, they might evaluate your risk differently. If they could monitor your smoke detectors and water sensors, they might reward you for proactive safety measures or penalize you for not having them. The data exists. The only question is who gets to use it and for what purposes. Or consider what could happen in a landlord-tenant dispute. If a landlord installed smart devices in a rental property, they might have access to data about the tenant's comings and goings. When the tenant is home, when they have visitors, when they adjust the thermostat, All of this could be used to monitor tenant behaviour in ways that would have been impossible before smart home technology. Some jurisdictions have laws protecting tenant privacy, but enforcement is challenging, especially when the surveillance is digital rather than physical. The fundamental problem is that we've invited monitoring systems into our most private spaces in exchange for convenience. We've accepted surveillance as the price of automation. We've normalized the idea that homes should be connected, trackable, and transparent to the systems that control them. And in doing so, we've created vulnerabilities that we're only beginning to understand. Smart homes are not inherently bad. The convenience is real. The efficiency gains are measurable. The security features can genuinely protect families and property. But convenience always has a cost, and the cost of smart home convenience is measured in privacy, in the creation of permanent records, in the subtle erosion of truly private space. As you lie here in your home tonight, surrounded by whatever mix of smart and traditional devices you've chosen, consider what your home knows about you. Does it know when you wake up because your smart alarm clock records when you dismiss it? Does it know what you watch because your smart TV logs your viewing? Does it know when you shower because your smart water meter detects the flow? Does it know how you feel because your smart thermostat senses when you adjust the temperature for comfort? Your home has always held your secrets, but now some of those secrets are being recorded, stored in cloud servers far beyond your walls, accessible to companies, potentially to hackers, possibly to anyone with legal authority to request them. The home that was supposed to be your sanctuary has become, in subtle ways, your monitor. And the most unsettling part is that most of this surveillance is voluntary. We chose to install these devices. We agreed to the terms of service. We consented to the data collection, even if we didn't fully read the agreements or understand the implications. We traded privacy for convenience because the convenience was immediate and tangible, while the privacy risks were abstract and distant. Until they're not. Until a divorce makes every device a potential weapon. Until a legal case makes every log a potential evidence. Until a breach makes every recording a potential exposure. Until we realize that the smart home we built has been quietly watching us, listening to us, recording us, creating a comprehensive digital record of how we live in our most private space. The technology isn't going to uninvent itself. Smart homes will become more common, not less. The devices will become more sophisticated, more integrated, more capable. The question is whether we'll develop better frameworks for managing the privacy implications, better safeguards against misuse, better ways to ensure that convenience doesn't come at the cost of everything private. Sleep well tonight in your home, whether it's smart or traditional, whether it's monitoring you or simply sheltering you. Sleep well knowing that for now, in this moment, you're safe and secure. And try not to think too much about what your devices might be recording, what logs they might be keeping, what stories they might tell if anyone ever thought to ask what they know about how you really live. Story 6. Common threads and the path forward. We've travelled through 5 stories tonight. A Fitbit that exposed a murder, photos that refused to stay deleted, smart speakers that recorded private moments, digital ghosts of the deceased that haunt the living, and smart homes that know too much about how we live. 5 different scenarios, 5 different technologies, but they all reveal the same uncomfortable truths about the world we've built. The first truth is that digital data is permanent in ways we don't fully understand. When Richard DeBert's wife wore her Fitbit on that December morning, neither of them realized it was creating an indelible record. When iPhone users deleted photos years ago, they assumed those photos were gone. When the Portland woman had a private conversation in her home, she assumed it remained private. When people die, they don't imagine their digital presence will persist, generating notifications and memories. When we install smart home devices, we don't truly comprehend the comprehensive logs they're creating. Permanence is the invisible thread connecting all these stories. We've been taught by decades of analog existence that things fade, that records can be destroyed, that the past eventually recedes into memory and then into forgetting. But digital systems don't work that way. They store, backup, replicate, and preserve by default. Deletion is complicated, often incomplete, sometimes reversible. What we create in digital form tends to persist far longer than we intend or expect. The second truth is that we don't control our data as much as we think we do. Your Fitbit data lives on the company's servers. Your deleted photos might persist in corrupted database entries. Your voice recordings from Alexa are stored in Amazon's cloud. Your social media presence continues after you die unless someone explicitly manages it. Your smart home data flows through corporate systems. In each case, the data exists somewhere beyond your direct control, subject to policies you didn't write, stored on servers you'll never access, managed by systems you don't fully understand. We think of personal data as personal, as something we own and control. But the reality is that most of our digital data is held by corporations whose interests may not align with ours. They hold it for business reasons, legitimate business reasons, improving services, personalizing experiences, ensuring system stability. But they also hold it because data has value. It can be analyzed, aggregated, potentially monetized, and it can be accessed through legal processes, security breaches, or employee errors. The third truth is that our devices observe us more comprehensively than we realize. The Fitbit wasn't just counting Connie DeBate's steps, it was creating a minute-by-minute timeline of her movement, a timeline precise enough to contradict a murder alibi. The iPhone photo database wasn't just storing images, it was maintaining references to files in the file system that persisted even after apparent deletion. The Echo in Portland wasn't just waiting for wake words, it was processing all audio, ready to activate at any moment. Digital legacy systems aren't just passive repositories, they're active participants in our lives, generating notifications and memories. Smart homes aren't just convenient automation, they're comprehensive monitoring systems. Every sensor is a witness, every database is a potential archive, every connected device is a participant in creating a record of how we live. We focus on the convenience, the features, the benefits. But we often overlook the observation, the logging, the permanent record keeping that happens alongside the convenience. The fourth truth is that technology companies are still figuring this out alongside us. Apple didn't intend for deleted photos to reappear. Amazon didn't design Alexa to send private conversations to random contacts. Facebook didn't anticipate that deceased users would outnumber living ones by 2100. Fitbit didn't create their devices to solve murder cases. None of this was specifically planned. It emerged from the interaction of complex systems, from edge cases and unexpected scenarios, from the collision between new technology and age-old human situations like death, divorce, and crime. Companies are making policies on the fly, reacting to problems as they surface, trying to balance user privacy with business needs, struggling to anticipate how their technologies will be used or misused. This reactive approach means users are essentially beta testers for privacy and security, experiencing failures before proper safeguards are established. The fifth truth, perhaps the most uncomfortable one, is that we've made a collective choice to prioritize convenience over privacy without fully reckoning with that choice. We wanted devices that track our health, so we accepted that they'd create detailed biometric records. We wanted photo libraries that sync across devices, so we accepted cloud storage with its complexities. We wanted voice-controlled homes, so we accepted always listening microphones. We wanted social media to stay connected, so we accepted that our digital presence would persist beyond our lives. We wanted smart homes, so we accepted comprehensive monitoring. These weren't forced upon us. We chose them. We bought the devices, installed the apps, clicked agree on terms of service we didn't read. We made rational decisions based on the benefits we could see, often without fully understanding the costs we'd incur. And now we live with those costs, sometimes uncomfortably, sometimes disastrously, but almost always with a sense that we can't go back, that the convenience has become too integral to daily life to give up. So what do we do with these truths? How do we move forward in a world where our devices remember too much, where deletion isn't permanent, where privacy is compromised by convenience, where the digital and physical merge in ways that create new vulnerabilities? There are practical steps, though none are perfect. You can review privacy settings on all your devices and accounts, choosing the most restrictive options that still allow functionality. This means going through each service, reading the privacy options, understanding what data is collected and how it's used, and opting out of everything optional. It's tedious work, but it reduces your digital footprint. You can regularly delete data that you don't need to keep. Voice recordings from smart speakers can often be deleted manually. Fitness tracker data can be removed. Photo libraries can be culled. Email accounts can be cleaned out. The data that doesn't exist can't be subpoenaed, hacked, or accidentally exposed. Of course, this contradicts our instinct to preserve everything, to maintain comprehensive archives. But in a world where data is dangerous, minimalism becomes a form of protection. You can use encryption wherever possible. Encrypted messaging for sensitive conversations, encrypted storage for important files, VPNs to protect internet traffic. Encryption doesn't make you invisible, but it makes observation harder, makes data less accessible to casual breach or legal discovery. You can be thoughtful about what devices you bring into your home and how you use them. Do you really need a smart speaker in your bedroom? Does your bathroom need a voice assistant? Should your security cameras cover private areas or just entrances? Every device is a trade-off between convenience and observation. Being intentional about these trade-offs means thinking carefully about what you're gaining and what you're surrendering. You can create a digital estate plan, specifying what happens to your accounts and data after you die. This means making a list of accounts, designating legacy contacts where services allow it, documenting your wishes, and communicating with family members about what you want done with your digital presence. It's uncomfortable to plan for death, but it's more comfortable than leaving your loved ones to navigate confusing policies while grieving. You can be aware that anything you say or do near connected devices might be recorded and stored. This doesn't mean paranoia or self-censorship, but it does mean being thoughtful. Sensitive conversations might happen away from smart speakers. Private moments might happen away from security cameras. Financial information might be discussed out of range of devices that might mishear and activate, but individual actions, while important, only go so far. The larger issues require collective solutions, societal responses, legal frameworks that don't yet exist. We need better data protection laws that give users genuine control over their information. We need clearer deletion standards that ensure when something is marked as deleted, it's actually deleted. We need mandatory disclosure when devices record or when data is accessed by humans. We need better default settings that prioritize privacy rather than requiring users to opt out of observation. We need technology companies to design for privacy from the beginning, rather than adding privacy features after problems emerge. This is called privacy by design. The principle that systems should be built with privacy protections as fundamental features, not afterthoughts. It means encryption by default, local processing where possible, minimal data collection, transparent policies, and user control as standard rather than exception. We need better frameworks for digital death, standardized processes that make it easier for survivors to manage digital estates without requiring hours of phone calls and form filling. We need social media platforms to proactively offer memorialization rather than waiting for people to request it. We need smart device manufacturers to recognize that devices outlive relationships and build in features for gracefully removing shared access. We need courts and legislators to grapple with what Fourth Amendment privacy protections mean in an era where so much private information is stored with third parties. Does storing data in the cloud diminish your privacy rights? Should it? How do we balance legitimate law enforcement needs with individual privacy? These are hard questions without easy answers, but they need to be addressed through thoughtful policy rather than through the haphazard precedent of individual cases. And perhaps most fundamentally, we need a cultural shift in how we think about technology. We need to move beyond the narrative that tech is neutral, that it's just a tool, that any problems are user error or misuse. Technology shapes behavior. It creates incentives. It enables certain actions while making others difficult. The smart home that monitors you isn't neutral. The social media that persists after death isn't neutral. The fitness tracker that creates evidence isn't neutral. These systems embody values and priorities, usually the values of convenience and engagement over privacy and autonomy. Recognizing that technology isn't neutral allows us to be more critical consumers, to demand better from companies, to advocate for policies that protect people rather than just corporate interests. It allows us to reject the idea that privacy concerns are Luddism or paranoia, and instead recognize them as legitimate responses to genuine risks. None of this means abandoning technology. The fitness tracker that exposed a murderer also saves lives by helping people stay healthy. The photos that reappeared also preserve precious memories. The smart speakers that accidentally record also provide accessibility for people with disabilities. The digital presence that persists after death also provides comfort to grieving loved ones. The smart homes that monitor also provide security and efficiency. Technology is neither purely good nor purely evil. It's complex, creating both benefits and costs, requiring nuanced engagement rather than wholesale acceptance or rejection. But nuance requires knowledge. It requires understanding what our devices actually do, what data they collect, where that data goes, who can access it, how long it persists. It requires reading beyond the marketing, questioning the assumptions, thinking critically about the trade-offs. It requires recognizing that the 5 stories we've explored tonight aren't aberrations or edge cases. They're illustrations of how digital systems work, how data persists, how observation is built into convenience, how the promise of smart technology comes with the reality of surveillance. Richard Debate probably never thought about his wife's Fitbit until it became evidence against him. iPhone users probably never worried about deleted photos until they reappeared. The Portland woman probably trusted her Alexa until it betrayed that trust. People creating social media accounts probably don't think about what happens to those accounts after death. People installing smart home devices probably don't imagine they'll one day be used in divorce proceedings or criminal cases. But now you know. You know that devices remember. You know that deletion is complicated. You know that privacy is fragile. You know that convenience costs. You know that the digital world is permanent in ways the analog world never was. And with that knowledge comes choice. Not an easy choice, not a comfortable choice, but a choice nonetheless about how to live in this world of devices that remember too much. And so, we come to the end of our journey through these stories of digital memory and surveillance. We've seen how our devices watch, listen, record, and remember. We've explored the gaps between what we think happens and what actually happens with our data. We've confronted uncomfortable truths about privacy, permanence, and the permanent digital shadows we cast. If these stories have unsettled you, that's understandable. The realization that we're more observed, more recorded, more permanent than we knew should be unsettling. It should prompt reflection about how we use technology, what we share with devices, what assumptions we make about privacy and deletion. But unsettlement doesn't have to become anxiety. Knowledge is power. Understanding how these systems work, what risks they create, what protections exist, that knowledge allows you to make better choices. Maybe you'll review your privacy settings tomorrow. Maybe you'll delete old data you don't need. Maybe you'll be more thoughtful about what devices you bring into your home or how you use the devices you already have. Or maybe you'll decide that the convenience is worth the cost, that the benefits outweigh the risks, that you're willing to live in an observed world because the observation enables things you value. That's also a valid choice, as long as it's an informed choice rather than an unconscious default. What matters is that you're thinking about it, that you're aware, that you recognize the devices around you aren't just tools, they're also observers, recorders, participants in creating a permanent digital record of how you live. And with that awareness, you can be more intentional about what you create, what you share, what you allow to persist. As you drift towards sleep tonight, surrounded by whatever constellation of devices you've chosen to include in your life, you might feel differently about them. That phone by your bedside quietly backing up to the cloud, that smart speaker in the corner waiting to hear its name, that fitness tracker on your wrist monitoring your heart rate even now, that security camera watching over your home, each one serving you but also observing you, creating records that might persist far longer than you ever intended. But here's the thing about awareness. It doesn't have to breed fear. It can breed wisdom. Understanding the risks allows you to mitigate them. Understanding the trade-offs allows you to make better choices. Understanding the systems allows you to use them more safely. So rest easy tonight, knowing that you're now more informed than you were before. Rest easy knowing that knowledge, even uncomfortable knowledge, is better than ignorance. Rest easy knowing that you can make changes, can adjust settings, can protect yourself better. The devices will still be there in the morning. They'll still remember. They'll still observe. They'll still create records. But you'll engage with them differently, more thoughtfully, more carefully, more aware of what they're really doing beyond their advertised convenience. Thank you for spending this time with me on The Sleepy Computer Scientist, exploring these darker corners of our technological world. If these stories have given you something to think about, I invite you to like and subscribe to the channel, or share your thoughts in the comments below. Let others know what you've learned. Help spread awareness about these issues that affect us all. But for now, let those thoughts drift away. Let your breathing slow. Let your body sink into rest. Let your mind release its grip on the concerns of the day. The devices will keep their vigil while you sleep. They'll keep recording, storing, remembering. But you need rest. You need to let go, to trust that you're safe, that you're protected, that tomorrow you can think about these things more carefully. For tonight, just sleep, just rest. Just allow yourself to drift into the quiet dark, where memories soften, where observation pauses, where the only record being kept is the gentle rhythm of your breathing and the slow beat of your heart. Sleep well, knowing that while devices may remember too much, you now remember what matters. That awareness is power, that privacy requires vigilance, and that in a world of observation, the most precious thing you can protect is your understanding of what's really happening in the invisible spaces between you and your devices. Good night. May your rest be peaceful, your dreams unrecorded, and your privacy, as much as possible in this digital age, your own.